Thanks for tuning in to today's broadcast.
All right, so we've been teaching them from the topic of church on a rock. And of course, if we'll start here with our base or foundational scripture, Matthew 16, one of the foundational scriptures, where Matthew 16:13, Jesus came into the coast of Caesarea Philippi. He asked his disciples, saying, "Whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" And they said, "Some say thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." And he said unto them, But whom say ye that I am? And Simon Peter answered and said, Thou art Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus answered, said unto him, Blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And I say unto thee that thou art Peter, large rock, and upon this rock, humongous rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. So we said that when he said that upon this rock I'll build my church, it was revealing to Simon who he was, and that was Peter, large rock. So in other words, what he was purposed to do upon the larger rock. So a revelation of who he was and where he fit in the kingdom. So when you talk about the church, you talk about so it's church on a rock, so it's church on that revelation. So he said the church, from the word ecclesia, means called out ones. So we could say it means many large rocks, many large rocks. So many people with purpose, many people with purpose. And then another word for church is called assembly. So if you think about it, let's say we're called out ones, many people with purpose coming together to form the rock, the ultimate purpose. That's why the scripture says, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. So we just think, yes, it does mean come to church, but it means coming together to be as one. We're so powerful when we can come together to be as one. And then I gave you the scripture, Luke 24, where it says they were continually in the temple. And then Luke 4:16 and 17, it says it was Jesus' custom before he said, the anointing is upon me to preach the gospel, to heal the brokenhearted and things of that nature. It said it was his custom. So it was his custom to come to church. It was his custom to be in the house of God. So we talked about that. And then last week we talked about when we're in the house of God, when we come together, God brings us together to speak life to each other, to encourage one another so we can harmonize and become more as one. So we got to watch sowing discord. And one of the things we talked about, the way we sow discord, is divisive words or negative talk or tearing down talk versus building up talk. All of our conversation among each other should be building up, not tearing down. You think about it, you probably don't want to say tearing down talk anyway because you're snared by the words of your mouth. So you may be saying something to tear somebody else down, and you've just tore yourself down, because you're held captive by what you say. So we talked about that last week. We're not going to get too much into that. And then we said that in Genesis it says he made us in our image after his likeness, made us in his image and after his likeness. And in Psalms 139, he fearfully and wonderfully made us. He knew us before we was in the womb. And basically, we're all these rocks being placed in a place. God set the members of the body as it pleases him, 1 Corinthians 12:18. And so we talked about last week how, just like in the temple back in Solomon's day, they carved out the bricks ahead of time, so there won't be no chiseling in the temple, and they fitly set them in place. And when everything was in place in the temple, it said the Spirit came in the house and the priest couldn't stand to minister. So God does the same thing with us. He set the members in the body as it pleased us. We're all in place, and when everything, we're carved out ahead of time. There's things that's carved out of us. There's things that, those stones had to fit together. And they had to fit so intricately together, that almost, you ever see people do this with, if anybody has a phone, if you could put it on airplane mode because it creates feedback. But if you think about it, I grew up with people that raised me, foster parents, they were masons. You know, they built things all the time. And I remember how when they would build patios and things of that nature, or, you know, how we go out and we buy, what is the things that we do barbecues on? Grills, I'm sorry. So we buy grills. They didn't buy grills. They made barbecue pits. So he'd go to the backyard, he built a wall with some brick, and then he built a barbecue pit on the wall. You could go in the backyard and cook all the time, you know. And they built the patio back there, you know. Whatever they needed. You know, the daughter wanted to stay at the house, so it was a two-family house. They built a dish to turn the attic into an apartment. So they would, but I watched when they would do the bricks. You know, so we had to get we had to buy cement, but you had to buy cement, you had to buy sand, and you had to buy the little stones. And you would you put the water and you mix it all together. And then they would, you know, you take your little spatula, slap that little cement on it, but everything had to fit together. But see, they took it to a whole nother level back then. They already, and see what happens if the brick didn't fit, they would take the little spatula and crack the brick, you know, and shave off an end of it, put it in place, and then use the cement to make it fit. The cement made it fit. The cement made it fit. So the cement made it fit. It all fit in a second. All right, so, but what they did back then was it said they were endowed with power. So what happens is those that they pulled in to assist in building the temple, God specially imparted things into them. So that they could actually seamlessly cut brick that was going to fit together almost perfectly. So they you know, because it takes a keen eye and a sharp mind to line things up perfectly before you even got to the temple. See, they weren't normal people, and they said they were cunning. There's the supernatural power in them, cunning in crafting gold and silver, because you walked in the temple and things were they had gold that looked like angels but handcrafted. I remember we did our conference in Ohio, in Dublin, I think the first year. So there was a sculptor in there inside the place. And so you go around a corner and it was like sculptures of kids running, you know. So he took a piece of stone and he carved that thing out. He saw a kid inside of a stone and carved it out. You know, and so that's how they did things. So what happens is we're carved out by the master sculptor, and that's God. And he cuts out what we don't need so we could fit together. Because sometimes our fear is blocking the fit. So we got to shave some of that off. You know, sometimes lust is blocking the fit. So you got to shave some of that off. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes your pain and what you've been through in your past, you know, we got together. We had a lot of things blocking us from harmonizing. So God had to keep shaving things off of both of us so we fit and became as one. And the challenge was we were trying to hold on to the stuff. So when the blade came, we were trying to get around the blade or fighting against the blade as opposed to accepting the cut. You know, if you take a tree and you want to, you have a tree dying, you have a tree that's alive, and you want to take the tree dying and then graft it into the tree. The tree that's living goes through a cut. The tree that's dying goes through a cut. And you put it in place, you engraft it, you merge it, and you tie it together. And eventually the little tree that was dying actually engrafts or merges and becomes one with the tree that was living. Right? So that's what God is trying to do with us. You know, some of us may be, the scripture says, let the strong bear the infirmities of the weak. Some of us may be stronger in areas than others, but when we come together, we go through some cuts and we actually become together as one. You know, so in our life, there's things that she loves to do that I don't even care about. But there's things I love to do she don't care about. But we come together as one. Now, I've taken on, and I like some of the things she likes to do. She likes some of the things I like to do, but we flow together because we both have our lanes, and it just flows. It just flows, as opposed to me thinking, you know, I'm less than a man because she's great at negotiations, phenomenal in negotiations. So when we first got together, we were being stifled because I'm the man. I do all the negotiations. Babe, like we'd be in a situation, she'd start saying, babe, what you doing? Like, why are you even talking? Like, I'm the guy. This is the arena. And the Lord showed me, he says, boy, he even showed me back in the Bible when it was time for them to leave out of Egypt, who they sent to get the gold and the jewels? They didn't send the guys. All the women went and negotiated. Those people gave away all their stuff. How do you think they built that golden calf? It was on Egypt's jewels. But study it out. Read it for yourself. The women went. And the women had favor. They did all the negotiations. Yeah, see, so in our house, I make the final decision, but that girl, if she's negotiating some stuff, I like, babe, like, okay. We went to get a car one time. We had a rotation to get cars. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but we had a rotation to get cars, so the next rotation was me. But she's like, well, babe, could I get a new car if nothing changes? I was like, but it's not even your turn. She was like, but suppose nothing changes. We go to the dealership. I'm talking to the guy about the Lord. And so she negotiates the deal, and the guy says, well, we need your car. Her car was at home. And I said, well, her car's at home. And she knew I had to be at home at a certain time because I had something I had planned. I said, well, babe, you know what the rule is, 3:30. I got to be at when I go to 3:30. The guy took us in the back, negotiated the whole deal, sold her the car, never even saw her car, paid top dollar for her car and everything. She did the whole thing. I just signed on the bottom line. I made the final decision. But so just, I don't know if somebody needed to hear that, but we're fit. We were talking about being fitly joined together, but that was last week. All right, so we have to ask ourselves, why are we at church? Why are we coming into the house of God? A lot of times, some people do come to church for all types of things. Some people come to church looking for mates, instead of looking for their maker. You know what I'm saying? So the whole purpose of coming to the house, I remember when I first started got serious about the Lord, and I went to a church in Summit, New Jersey. And so I had this philosophy that men of God don't even be flowing with God. They just scripted. They all scripted. So I go in this church. I'm sitting way in the back. I was like, man, this dude, he had this paper in front of him, and he was talking. He reading the paper. I said, man, this dude ain't even like listening, hearing from God. And in the next breath, he said, man, I preach when I want to. So now I'm way in the back. I didn't say it out loud. I was like, I know that dude ain't talking to me, man. And then I was like, I don't know, somebody next to me might have been gossiping. This person over here is talking. I said, man, these people ain't even coming, to hear from God. I mean, what kind of church is this? And next breath, he said, you ain't supposed to be here for the people. You're supposed to be here to see God. I was like, I know this dude ain't talking to me, man. This dude don't know me. But his point was true. Why are we coming? Why are we coming to the house? Are we really coming to hear God? Well, I can't believe they looked at me that way. Well, they might not have looked at you the right way, but how did God look at you? They ain't even speak to me today. Well, they might not have spoke to you, but what did God say? So what are we coming into the house for? All right, so with that in mind, the scripture says in Habakkuk, we don't have to go there, but the scripture says in Habakkuk, before it says write the vision, make it plain. He says, I was standing upon the watch. Meaning he was attentive. He was attentive. He was setting his heart to see what God was doing. He was setting his heart to see what God is doing. Why? Because our life is not about convenience. It's about obedience. I was talking to a young man this week, and, he's been going through some different philosophies. He's a young minister in another state. So he's going through some different philosophies. And so now he's locked in again. So I said, now you being locked in, how does that line up with what you told me last time we talked? He says, what do you mean? I said, well, you have some different takes on the word. So now that you're locked in, you're talking, you're ministering to people about the word. He says, I feel the same way I've always felt. I said, so hopefully you don't mind me sharing this. Well, they don't know who it is. But I said, you must don't know who you're talking to. I wasn't saying that to be smart. I was just saying, like, come on, you're talking to me, right? Like, I know you. And so I went back. I said, you remember you was telling me, well, I don't know how we know this stuff is true, this, that, and the other. And so he says, well, there's some different takes on the perspectives of the Bible and things of that nature. I said, well, let's just break it down. It's real simple. It's all about obedience.
Thanks for tuning in to today's broadcast. To view videos or make donations, feel free to access our website at www.heirscc.org.